PC leader Kathy Dunderdale was in St. Anthony this evening and was greeted by both protesters and supporters at the campaign headquarters for Selma Pike, the PC candidate in St. Anthony.
Thank you so much.
I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. A little bit short notice, so we've got a fine crowd here. Big welcome for Mayor Dunderdale, I guess. Just want to say we're on the campaign trail. Busy days, long days. I've been knocking on doors from 9 in the morning till 9 at night. Trying to get everywhere and trying to get to all the doors. I'd like to thank everybody for their support, and let's go get them.
Is that your first political speech?
It is.
Only your last! Thank you so much for your warm welcome. It's wonderful to be back in this area of the province again. I've spent a fair amount of time here actually in the last 20 years or so, and it's always great to come back. It's so beautiful and there's so many things to see and do. Lots of issues in this part of the province. One of the first jobs that brought me here was in the early 90s when the cod fishery failed, and I was appointed to a committee that heard appeals from inshore fishers as to why they ought to receive compensation under NCUP. And their initial application had been turned down, and they had two levels of appeal. One was to the committee that I was on and later chaired, and one was to the minister. So that's where I met a lot of people in this area. In fact, it's where I met Trevor Taylor. And he was some saucy. And Trevor tells the story, we met one another and he said, she didn't like me and I didn't like her. And I thought, I thought he was okay. I don't know what he's talking about. Anyway, you know, there were things, you know, I learned through that process a lot about the communities in this area of the province and the struggle that goes on in terms of the fishery particularly. You know, my own dad was a fisherman, and I don't ever remember an easy time in my life where things went well for our family as a result of the fishery. If they did, it almost seemed like months at a time, certainly not years at a time. And my father spent a lot of time trying to do other businesses on the land that would take him off the sea and give him more consistent income, given the fact that he had 11 children that he was trying to raise up. And you know, it wasn't always possible. He always ended up going back there and eventually retired from the sea. And you know, I remember, you know, life for people who did that being very difficult, whether or not they went to sea on the draggers and then trawlers, or whether or not they worked in the fish plant. And I remember not a lot of people living much beyond their retirement age at the fish plant. You know, when they finally did get a pension, not many of them got to draw it down, because their bodies had been so broken by the back-breaking work that they did in those days, 50 weeks of the year. And I was just reminded of that again when I was on Fogo Island last week, I think it was. Days are kind of jamming up on me now. but they're harvesting sea cucumbers there, and so we were in the plant, and they were telling us how important this work was to them. And we saw men and women there in a cold facility, you know, stood for 10 hours a day on a hard floor, doing repetitive actions that must have been really hard on their upper body, hands in cold water all day. And I thought, you know, I don't know that I'd have the stamina to do this work. This is still one hell of a hard way to earn a living. And yet talking to each of them as they continue in their task, as they talk to me about how important that was to them and their well-being, not only in terms of their community, but in terms of their own families and so on. So, you know, we've got big, important issues that we have to deal with in the fishery. They've never been easy to deal with. They're certainly not going to be easy to deal with this time around either. But I think a time has come when we really have to deal with them. People have to get serious about it. All the partners in this, which includes your government here in this province, the federal government, the FFAW, processors and so on. And you know, I look forward to that process being started. But it has to be an inclusive one, because I'm not going to be prepared to be part of something that constantly leaves fish plant workers out and people other than the license holder in the boat out. So when I knew Trevor, and Trevor came on, you know, Trevor came to government before I did, but in that process I met Selma as well, who's always a great campaigner, a great Tory. Whether she was working on the Labrador coast in Cartwright, Lansinclair, her original home, but I knew her here. Selma's lived here for 20-odd years. And one of the things that I loved about her when I first met her was that she worked for the Department of Transportation and Works, which was a male-dominated field. And, you know, Selma was in there, and Selma is known by Selma Pike, but she's also known as the Rhodes woman. So, you know, Selma's not afraid about where she's going to go or how she's going to carve out the space for herself and where she's going to feel comfortable. And when we talked about her becoming a candidate in this election, I was absolutely thrilled. I will be so glad to have this woman on my team. And, you know, we've had our issues in this area of the province, and, you know, on the subject of the air ambulance, and I know there's some people outside tonight that, you know, aren't happy with the decisions we took. There's probably people in this room not particularly happy about it. But, you know, I can tell you that I was part of that decision. You have to know that. That, you know, and the facts were put before us, and, you know, the question was asked, you know, what is this in the best interest of the people? And once we were satisfied, and once I was satisfied that it was, then I was part of that decision. But, you know, we have to work together. It's important that we work together, that we respect one another. And, you know, sometimes we're going to have to agree to disagree. But I was delighted to have Selma here because I knew that this woman could represent the issues of this district. And so I was delighted. And I'm thrilled with the way that people have responded to her. And all of you have responded to her. And so many of you are part of her campaign. That is a wonderful endorsement of her. And I really want to see her with us on October 11th. And, you know, things are looking very, very promising. So we've got 2 weeks left to go, a little less than 2 weeks left to go. Work hard, and, you know, send her down to us, and, you know, we'll work through our differences, and we'll continue to make good investments. You know, I just saw Marshall Dean's flyer, and he says he's gotten $30 million worth of investment since he became the MHA for this area. Well, Marshall, I got to tell you something, old man. That's not your investment in this area. This is the Tory government's investment. Work to do, so we'll have a little celebration tonight. I'm looking forward to speaking to all of you before we go, and then, you know, we just got to buckle down, get every vote that we can lay our hands on, make sure this is delivered to the ballot box, and we'll have great victory on October 11th. Thanks so much.
This is Tim Clark reporting for StAnthonyNews.ca.